Nick, thank you so much for helping me these past couple days. You are so sweet.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, does this seem ripe to you?
I don't know. I don't need food unless it has an expiration date on it.
Nick, you are funny. You eat worse than my 7-year-old son. You kind of dress like him, too.
What's wrong with that?
And do you know I have never seen you without a hat?
You don't need to see me without my hat.
Oh, come on, Nick. Let me see. What do you have under them?
What you mean?
Come on, Nick.
Watch out, girl. Get back. Hold on. Get back.
Give me that. Ow! Oh. Hang on. Don't move. There. Nick, wait.
Right. You want to go to my apartment?
No, I can't. I've thought about it. I really have. But let's be realistic. I'm a single mom.
No. You a sexy mama.
Nick. I think we should just be friends.
Go.
Nick, thank you so much. You are such a great friend.
The friend zone is for losers only. Please unload your friend and get on with your life.
Come back to the friend zone in a minute. We've been in a series called Backscratcher, and really the whole series is kind of based on the premise and idea that in life there's things that you need somebody else for. We've talked about what parents need from kids and kids need from parents. We're going to be moving into what we need from one another in the context of a marriage relationship. And sort of the metaphor we've been building off of is we have those things that we need some help for from somebody else, but instead of looking to somebody else, we just find some other way to meet the need. Like a back itch, you just find a good back scratcher, which, by the way, this is the best one I've found yet, and I think it's because it mimics an actual hand. It's a little creepy that it has fingernails for some reason on it, but they're not like sharp fingernails. And then look at that, it's got a shoehorn on the other side. So anybody still use shoehorns anymore? Okay, all right, yeah. If you have a hard time getting down to it. So yeah, this has been my favorite one so far, so I'm not giving this one away, but I do still have one of these. So are we talking about being single today? Anybody single here today? Hey, all right, here we go, right on the front row. There you go. Very own back scratcher, all right. I want to talk about this morning about how do you find the perfect back scratcher for life? In other words, how do you find that person to be married to? Before we can really talk about marriage, I think we need to sort of pause for a minute and look at the dating side of things. This is all the more relevant, not just because I've gone through this process a few times in my own life, but because I now have kids who are moving into this phase in life, and so I'm thinking more and more about it. And along with that, the kind of disturbing trend that we're seeing now is that fewer and fewer people even want to get married. And as such, the average age that people are getting married keeps getting pushed later and later. Back in the 90s, when the first time I was on a go-around of the dating scene, the average age that a woman would get married would be 23 and a man would be 26. Now, that is pushed to 28 for women and age 30 for men. Now, the most disturbing stat I saw in relation to this is the average age in which someone has their first child is 26. So if you're not getting married till 28 or 30, but you're having kids at age 26, it's no wonder that 40% of kids are now born into a non-traditional home. And there's a lot of stats that show that this is a more difficult environment to grow up in. And I can vouch for this because my kids, as you may all know, after my wife passed, I've been kind of thrust into this non-traditional world. And it's been difficult to raise kids in a non-traditional environment. At least I assume so compared to what a traditional environment might be. Now, the reason for this shift has to do with lots of sociological factors. Most importantly is how people date nowadays. They did a survey back in the city of Philadelphia back in 1930 and found that 1/3 of the people in Philadelphia back in 1930 had married somebody that grew up within 5 city blocks of their house. Just let that sink in, right? Whereas nowadays, that's very rare that you would ever meet and marry somebody that grew up in your same neighborhood or even subdivision, if not even city. It happens less and less nowadays because of online dating and everything else. Everything is thrust into, there's thousands of people to choose from all over the world. And what used to be, people would meet somebody either at school or at church, now that has shifted to bars and online, for better or for worse. And I would argue in many ways for worse. Because it's not just where you meet somebody, it's where you meet somebody has done to the motivators behind dating. And what I mean by that is the predominant motivators for dating nowadays are not what you might think, and they're definitely not what would lead to a wonderful, lasting, loving relationship with somebody. The motivating factors in dating nowadays are fear, pride, and lust. Those are what the sociologists have pulled out of what they're seeing nowadays. Fear, beginning off with the fact that, what's the stat for how many people what marriages end up in divorce? What is it? 50%, everybody always says, right? 50% of all marriages and divorce. That's actually not even a true stat. That was a projection that they believed it would be, but really the number is only about 35% of marriages end in divorce. So, wow, you can see it's a whole lot better than we originally thought. No, let's face it, 35% is still far too high. And it's high enough that you don't just know somebody who got divorced. Rather, you intimately, closely know somebody who's been through divorce, whether it's yourself, your parents, a brother or sister, or a very close friend. And going along with that, when you look at the most difficult thing that somebody can go through is the death of a spouse. Second to that is divorce. Now, having been through both, I can testify right on the money with those things. Very, very difficult to go through both of those or either of those. Now, if you look at marriage and say there's a 35% chance I could go through the second most traumatic experience a person can go through, how excited are you about the idea of getting married? Do you see where marriage is going to have certain fears baked into the whole concept of even getting married? Furthermore, there's another fear that goes along with this, and that is the fear of what it could do to me and myself. And this is where fear and pride kind of come together. So now keep in mind, the stuff I'm going to share with you, these aren't my ideas. If you don't like them, don't shoot the messenger, okay? I'm telling you what reality is out there. I'm not telling you what I think or what my opinions are. I'm just telling you what I've read about what is out there. So, women oftentimes are wanting to wait a little bit longer because it's a gamble. Let's face it, it's a gamble to take a risk on the guy you meet in school. Because we all know the story of the high school quarterback who turns out to be a loser later in life, right? We all know that story. So women are wanting to wait a little bit longer to see which one of these guys actually pans out, right? Which one of them ends up with a good paying job and a stable home life, right? Because it's kind of a gamble if you just marry somebody out of high school or maybe even, in trade school or college or wherever it be. It's a real gamble. You don't really know what you're going to get. Better to wait, so this is where the fear comes in, better to wait so you can find somebody who is more of a sure thing. Now, on the guy side, they look at it like, why would I want the baggage of a relationship? It's only going to slow me down with my career goals. Because if I got to lug this girl all over the country every time I get a good job opportunity, it's kind of weighing me down to take her and maybe a possible kid or a family and all the expense that has. I want to pay off my student loans. I want to get to a stable place. I want to be able to get ahead in life because it's really hard dragging around a wife all over the place. And so, once again, don't shoot me. This is not my idea. I'm not saying this, okay? I am reflecting to you the nature of the culture, okay? And so you can begin to see why there's an incentive to wait longer and longer and longer before you make that decision. And thus, the average marriage age is pushed to 28 to 30 years old, to the place where you can find those things that you're looking for out of the fears that are coming out of this. Now, pride comes into this as well because there's been a revitalization, especially with online dating, there's been a revitalization of the idea that finds its roots actually in Greek mythology, and that is the idea that you can find your soulmate, okay? Soulmate actually comes from a Greek mythological concept where at one point humanity was whole. Male and female was a single being, but I don't know, God's got jealous of their power or something like that. I don't know how the garbage goes, but they split them apart, cast them to different places, and now you're destiny, your quest in life is to find your other half. A lot of these terms we get, to find my other half, my better half, my soulmate, right? Or in the Jerry Maguire language, find someone who you could say, you complete me. That's a whole concept. This all comes out of Greek mythology, not Scripture. This is not a scriptural view of marriage. This is a Greek mythological view. Now, this kind of lose steam over time, especially if you are in the city of Philadelphia, and really your only marriage options are the 10 to 15 girls who are growing up within 5 city blocks of your place, or if you look around at your high school graduating class and, really this group of losers is all I got to deal with. I don't really see anything here that suits my fancy. But if that's all you have to choose from, right? You kind of look at it like, well, you got to dance with the one who said yes to the prom, right? You only have so many options. You lower your expectations. You temper your expectations to what is reality. And you kind of say, you're not going to find the perfect person. You kind of got to make the best of what you got around. But now with online dating, where you can peruse through thousands upon thousands of potential mates, it's revived the idea that if you don't find the perfect person, it's just because you're too lazy. It's just because you didn't put forth the effort. I mean, they're all out there. It's just a matter of spending the time to scroll through and find and evaluate, because certainly with that many choices, with thousands to hundreds of thousands of options, with that many options out there, there's got to be somebody out there who is the perfect person for me. And this idea of finding the perfect person for me then only exacerbates this issue of pride and self-centeredness, because really, what am I looking for? I'm looking for somebody who is the perfect person, because if I find the perfect person, it's going to result in the perfect marriage. Because if I can find the perfect person for me, where I struggle with discipline, they can add structure. If I struggle with financial issues, they can add savings. If I struggle with cleanliness, they can clean up. And everybody's looking for somebody that they can clean up after, have to add discipline to, and will spend all their money. That's exactly what everybody's looking for. And that's why you're the perfect person. No, nobody's looking for that. But we go out thinking to ourselves that certainly with this many options, the perfect person for me is definitely possible. And when you come across somebody who doesn't measure up, well, that's okay. There's always somebody else out there. There's more fish in the sea. There's more people on whatever your online site is that you want to go to. There's tons of people out there to choose from. Just find somebody else who fits the mold. And so dating becomes this very self-focused endeavor to find the perfect person for me. Furthermore, if you look at online dating, think about the characteristics that thrive in online dating. It's looks and charm, right? It's what does your profile pics look like? Get those good down angle shots and the one where you actually look decent and maybe still have some hair. And then you also go with, so what kind of witty banter can you put in your online dating profile? Okay, and so you kind of put through there something that might make them laugh or bring out your humor, right? What does Proverbs 31 say about this? Charm is deceitful and beauty is fleeting. And yet, what is the foundation of online dating? Charm is deceitful and beauty is fleeting, but that's the foundation for what it takes to find a mate nowadays. Is you got to have a picture that looks good, and you got to have a bio that's quite charming and attractive. Now you add to this issue of fear and pride, the other motivating factor is lust, which is a result of what I would call the pornification of our culture. And what I mean by that is porn has become so pervasive, it impacts every aspect of our life, everything from how people date to what people wear, and it just kind of continues to go on and on and on. Now, for one, it has changed how we view sex. It used to be that sex outside of marriage had a taboo with it, and so part of the push to get married was the desire to have a respectable relationship, and of course, to not have a transmitted disease, and on and on. The only safety and security for this kind of relationship was found in marriage. That is definitely not the case nowadays. Things have been much more accepting around the board. Furthermore, pornography has changed the way that men view women. Is that a fair statement? Okay. Now, in that, it pushes you to realize that there's lots of different things that you might be attracted to, and you may have a different attraction on a different day. And so pornography feeds right into that, because whatever you want, you can find on pornography. But guess where you can also find it now? On a dating site where the thumbnails mimic the same pictures they see on a porn site. And so you've got somebody who's been trained since the time they were 12, 13, 14 years old to just look for new and different, new and different, new and different. And now they go into the dating scene. New and different, new and different, new and different. I want to date a redhead. I want to talk to a redhead. I want to see what it'd be like to be with a redhead. You can find one. Eventually, you could probably get one to go out with you. Maybe. I don't know. But you have a possibility. And you can hang out with her for a little bit. And then you might say, I'm kind of done with redhead. I want to try brunette. So you go brunette. And you can just keep on going through whatever demographic is your fancy of the week. Big girl, small girl, tall girl, short girl, redhead, brunette. Whatever you want, you can find out there, whether it's a man or a woman, whatever it is you want to find, you can find online. And the only difference is, this is where you get to live out a real-life fantasy, which could be far better than pornography. And that's what the promise really becomes. And so it becomes that. And on top of that, it makes people far more disposable, or at least in your mind. People are just a commodity. You can just pass through them. And when you're tired with them, you just simply, in porn, you just exit out of the browser. With people, you just ghost them. Right? You don't ever have to have any further conversation or relationship with them whatsoever. You just ghost and move on. And it's almost become part of online dating where you just have to begin to deal with the reality of ghosting. And it happens both ways. And now, by the way, there are other ways that women use men as a commodity. I found this out last time I was back in the dating pool. I actually went out with somebody. And while we were talking dinner, I found out that she didn't even live here. She was just here for like 2 weeks. And I was like, then why? Why didn't you disclose that? What did you say? She said, well, I just wanted to go out to dinner. And she opened my mind, or my reality, to the fact that this was a very common thing amongst her friends and many other people, that whenever you're traveling, if you want to find good things to do and fun things to do in a city, and you want to go out to nice restaurants, you just go onto dating sites and you'll find a guy who's a sucker like me who will take you to a nice restaurant. And I just sat there thinking to myself, we really should split this check. You really should split this check. I didn't, because I'm just not that type, and I probably should figure that out. Maybe, I don't know. I just a sucker right across the top of my head. So that's what dating has become, which is why, for me, I got to the point where I just didn't want to do it anymore. And maybe some of y'all have been there as well. And the reason why I showed that opening clip is because when I was in high school, when I was in college the first time around, the one place I never wanted to be was in the friend zone. And now, some 20 to 30 years later, I found that's all I wanted. My desire was to be in a friend zone. That was it. Because I began to realize that marriage wasn't about finding the perfect person, and it wasn't about the looks or the charm or all these other things that we go through in the whole dating thing where you're interviewing somebody and you have this sort of job interview where you're going through all the resumes to see who's the right fit. I understood that marriage was about a friendship, and I just wanted to find a friendship that I could enjoy for life. And so instead of dating, I just was friending, I guess you could call it. Some of my friends would make fun of me, and they'd be like, oh, you guys are dating, aren't you? I'm like, no, we're not. We don't hold hands. We don't kiss. We don't hug. I don't even get out of the car when I drop her off. I'm like, bye. They, how dare you? It's not a date. That's why. And you might say, well, that's not how you treat a girl on a date. It's not a date. I said at the very beginning, I don't want a date. I'm not looking for a date. I'm not looking for a wife. I'm looking for a friend. And if you want to be a friend, let's hang out as friends. But that's all we're going to be, our friends, period. And that's all we were for a long time. And nobody could seem to understand it. I know years ago there was a book called I Kissed Dating Goodbye. I don't really know what that whole book was about. But I can just say I did. I got so sick of the whole job interview process that dating had become. I didn't want it anymore. I just wanted to find a friend. And I wanted to be in the friend zone, and that's where I'm at, and I'm very happy being in the. I'm other things too with Michelle now, but we're also still friends, and that's what I found. I found a friendship for life, and so this morning I want to kind of look through to see what does the Bible say about dating. Now, on the surface, I got to come out and say there's not a whole how-to guide on dating. The Bible has a lot to say about your character and your relationship with God. It also has a lot to say about marriage, and since dating really is about that which is leading up to marriage, we can pull some stuff out of that, but we can also pull out of the kind of character and the values that are necessary for finding the right person. I'd also suppose that there's many things out there that we think are dating, or that we think are marriage verses, but they're really, I would say, dating verses. So, for instance, over in Proverbs, when you read a proverb like this, it says, Proverbs 21:19. It's better to live in a desert than with a quarrelsome and nagging wife. Now, if you don't like that verse, that's God. Just take it up with him, not me. Okay, God said that, not me. Okay, all right. But let me just ask you this question. That setting, that statement, who do you think said it and who do you think they said it to? Was that one married guy complaining to another married guy at the bar? Or is that a married guy talking to a young man about his dating? Listen, son, it's a lonely life when you make a wrong choice for who you marry. And that's something we can all understand, right? So you better think twice about who it is you marry, because you'd be better off living your life in a desert than being in a bad marriage, being with somebody who's not somebody you want to be married to. So there are a lot of these things we find in Scripture. And so this morning I just want to look at two primary characteristics that should guide our dating process as it leads to marriage. And now, if you're not in a dating place, a couple things I'll tell you. Number one is, I'm sure you know somebody who is, and eventually you may have kids who are. And so these are kind of things you need to keep in the back of your mind. And like me, you may be hurled and thrusted against your will back into the dating scene someday. You never really know. And so that's why I want to put this out there before we sort of move into the marriage discussion. The guide that I want to use, I want to just pull out of Genesis 24 because it's really the closest thing we can find to a dating sort of passage in Scripture, if you will. Now, first of all, I'm glad the Bible doesn't have a lot to say about dating in a sense because the cultural norm back in the day was an arranged marriage, and I never really was excited about the idea of my parents choosing who it is that I would marry. However, now as a dad with kids, I can kind of see the wisdom in it and how much I would really love to be able to determine who it is my kids do and do not date, right? You with me on that one? So you can kind of see, I kind of starting to appeal to me now in my older age. But in Genesis 24, I'm just going to read a few select verses. By the way, Genesis 24 is the longest chapter in Genesis, which is kind of remarkable when you think about all that's in Genesis, okay? Like, the world was created in less verses than the dating passage, right? Just let that sink in for a second. Now, I'm also going to sort of handpick a few things out of it, and the reason for that is there's some creepy stuff in here. I don't know how else to say it. I could go through and explain it all to you, but I typically only do that at men's group because I don't try to creep you out on a Sunday morning too much. So you kind of have to go to men's group for that. And you might say, what about us women? Well, ask somebody who goes to men's group because it's really not polite for me to be the one to share with you some of the stuff that you read in Scripture. So all that to say, we're going to kind of cherry pick a few things out of here to pull the dating principles that we see. And we see the very first one in Genesis 24, verse 3. And this is Abraham talking to a servant of his who kind of is going to act as a matchmaker. And because the parents are the ones choosing who they're going to marry. And so he says, hey, here's how I want you to select the person that my son Isaac is going to marry. He says, I want you to swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and earth, that you will not get a wife from anywhere around here. Rather, I want you to go back to where I am from to find her someone to marry. Yes, I paraphrase that because there's some creepy stuff in the verse. All right, but that's basically what he says. I don't want you to find a girl around here. I want you to go back to my hometown. Because if you know the story of Abraham, he has this relationship with God. There's a very select few people in where he lives at the time, has a relationship with God. And says, I want you to leave here, and I want you to go all the way down to what will eventually become Israel. But the people there are an evil, wicked people. And so he says to this guy, he's like, listen, you're not going to find a good girl around here. You're just not going to find it. You're not going. Which, by the way, there's a lot of places you're not going to find a good girl, okay? And there's a lot of places you're not going to find a good guy. And you wonder why because you can't find a good guy? Because you're not looking in the right places. So he says you got to go look in the right place to find the right person. The right person is somebody who has the same faith that we have. So go back to where I came from, back to my hometown, and there you'll find somebody who has the same values that I have. Now, what do we pull out of this? Find somebody who has the same faith that you have, who is consistently pursuing a loving relationship with Jesus Christ like you are. Consistently pursuing is a key term there. Consistently pursuing a loving relationship with Jesus. Now, there's a lot of con artists in the dating world. Can I get an amen on that one? And never more true than when they find out you're a Christian. Oh, yeah, I love Jesus too. I grew up going to church. Yeah, matter of fact, I go to Faith Greece, Baptist Presbyterian Love God Church over. It's right over there. You know that one I'm talking about. Well, they understand I've been there. No, they don't. That's why I say this. Your first argument as a couple should be as to which church you're going to go to. You get that? That should be an argument. Why would it be an argument? Because theoretically, you would be so grounded and rooted here at your church, and they would be so rooted and so grounded there, it would be a difficult decision for either one of you to uproot yourself from your faith community, which you're a deep, rooted part of you, which is an integral part of your life, to up and move to go to a different church. That should be an argument that you have. You should really be debating the merits of the two. Now listen, I know this is the better church in the end. I get that. I understand that. I'm totally on board with that. But I also got to tell you, I love, so some people say, hey, Steve, I just want to let you know, man, get married and we're going to go to her church. I am okay with that. As a matter of fact, I love that because I think you have the best opportunity for a healthy, lasting, loving relationship because you found somebody that is so rooted and deeply into their faith community that they can't possibly give it up and they will not give it up for you. I love that. That's amazing. It's a lot better than, well, I go to Essential. I love going to Essential. I heard all great things about it. Let's go. Really? You have no root anywhere else, but yet you're going to tell me you're a strong Christian? I don't believe it. You understand me? I just don't believe it. If you could just up and move that quick and that easy. 2 Corinthians chapter 6 says this very clearly. Do not be yoked with unbelievers. This is an old farming terminology. You can't put, one big beefy oxen with one little mini oxen and just be going around in circles. You're not going to get anywhere. He says, what connection do you have in common with an unbeliever? You don't. Yeah, but we love the same music. Well, that's going to be great because when you all eventually divorce, they'll have a lot of good country songs, just like you will, that will just comfort you and with tears in your beer about what it's like to be now divorced. Going through the big D, don't mean Dallas. Yeah, you'll be great. It'll be wonderful for that time in your life. Maybe, just maybe, you ought to look for a shared value because you both have a loving relationship with Jesus Christ. You have a positive and right, accurate definition of love. Because outside of a loving relationship, Jesus says this, we didn't know or you don't know what love is until you understand my love for you. Because Jesus Christ showed us a love that this world did not know. It was a all-giving, sacrificial, you before me kind of love. It is described for us over in Philippians chapter 2, which says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility, consider other people's needs as more important than your own. We should all have the mind, share the mind of Christ, which was willing to give up everything that he had in heaven and come down here for our sake and give his life as a ransom for us. Sacrificially loves us. John would say, we didn't know what love was until we saw the kind of love where Jesus laid down his life for us. Now, the reason why I say that's so important is because you long to hear the words from somebody to you that says, I love you. But what people typically are saying when they don't understand this kind of love is simply, well, I love me. I love the way you make me feel. And so by the transitive property of love, I love you. And what are they really saying? I love you only simply because of what you do for me. It goes back to what is the motivating drivers in relationships? Pride, lust. Of course I love you. I love the way you make me feel. I love the way that you're going to complement my life. I think that you will complete me. That's not love, folks. That's going to fade. You need somebody, when they say I love you, what they're saying is I will lay down my life for you. I will sacrificially give my life for you. I will put you before me, and that's the key to a happy, long-lasting, loving relationship. And if you don't have a loving relationship with Jesus Christ, or if they don't have a loving relationship with Jesus Christ, how could you ever trust what they say when they say, I love you? It's probably not the same thing. It's probably a completely different word that they don't even understand what love is. Or what about money? What if their view of money is that the more money, the better, because that's the key to happiness? Whether you see money, it's the root of all evil. If we just make our life all about all the things we can acquire, but nothing else, it's going to lead us to a very bad place, a very self-centered place. What's their view of forgiveness? There are no enduring relationships without forgiveness. We are too sinful of a people to have an enduring relationship with anybody who cannot forgive us and we can't forgive. So what's their view of forgiveness? Is it just a feeling? Is it an altruistic thing that you conjure up that with power and self-will? Or is it simply because you realize God has forgiven me of so much, how could I not forgive you for anything that you've done to me? Outside of that, I don't know how you have a loving, lasting relationship with somebody that's going to require forgiveness over and over and over again. What's their view of marriage? Is it a covenant? Is divorce an option? How permanent is this thing when somebody says, I do? I don't know. Dating is training you how to leave. It really is. It's training you that people are disposable, and if you don't like them, you just move on to the next one. And so what is marriage? Well, marriage is what we're going to do for now, but if it doesn't work out and I feel like I don't love you anymore, or you don't love me, then we'll just move on if you're not meeting my needs. Or is marriage a lifelong covenant that reflects the relationship God has with us? Which is it? It matters. The next thing about it is he goes on and he says, so this guy is going down, he gets all the way back there, and he's there in town, he's looking around, and he starts praying, God, just make this easy. Show me somebody who's the kind of girl that we're looking for here. And it says, and just then Rebekah came out with her jar on her shoulder. I'm going to skip down. It says, verse 16, she was a woman who was very beautiful. She was a virgin. She'd never slept with any man. And she went down to the spring. So to get down to the spring, like in these towns, you'd have to go down a whole long series of steps way down into the ground. That's where the water cisterns would be. It'd be collecting all the rainwater. So she goes all the way down there. She carries her jar back up. And so she sees this guy who's from out of town sitting there. And this guy says to her, please, ma'am, could you give me a little bit of water? And she says, sure, sir. And so she goes over and she pours him some water. And then what she does on her own, she looks over and sees his camels and says, well, here, let me put some water in the trough for your camels. It doesn't look like I have enough. I'm going to go back down, get another jar of water, come back up, finish feeding your camels, and then I'll go down and get the water that I came here to get for myself. Whoa. Y'all get all that? What he is observing is he's observing the kind of character and the person that you'd want to be with. So step one is they've got to be consistently running after God, but second of all, they've got to have the kind of character that you'd want to hitch your wagon to for the rest of your life. And what he sees in her is, yeah, she's a pretty girl, but she's kept herself morally pure. And then she just has this character that says, I'm a kind person. She saw he had a need and she went to help him. And then she went above and beyond what was even being asked. Not to mention the fact that she's probably pretty athletic and in good shape and good health if she's going to keep going up and down the stairs all day, right? Little side point, little side benefit, right? So you look at all of this stuff and you see the character that comes out of this and the kind of person that she actually is. Now, I'll tell you this. You will be misled if you think you're a good judge of character. Because when it comes to dating, many of us are like a bull when we see red flags. We charge right into it, and it doesn't work out any better for us than it does for the bull. But at the end of the day, you've got to come back around and ask yourself the question, is this person really somebody I should hitch my wagon to? One of the best indicators of this is, what do your friends think of this person? That's not just a Spice Girls song. But if you look at the Song of Solomon, there's 4 characters in the Song of Solomon. It's this book about dating and marriage. There's God, the man, the woman, and their friends. And they're constantly asking their friends, what do you think of them? What do you think of them? What do you think of them? If this relationship is causing you to lose people who've been lifelong friends, or causing you to fall further and further away from your loving relationship with God, these are some indicators that this isn't a good thing for you. And for those of you who aren't married, I just want to ask, or who are married, I want to ask this question. Is the person who married you glad they married you? These are questions for reflection, sir. She already knows the answer. And now that you are married, what can you do to become that person where you failed or where you've struggled? Are you moving them closer in a relationship with Jesus Christ or further away? Are you a spiritual leader or are you pulling them away from Jesus? As you look back over your life, am I the kind of person that somebody should be married to? Will it result in them having a better and longer and deeper loving relationship with Jesus Christ because of it? Would you join us as we close our time in prayer? Father, I thank you for your grace over us. For Father, where we failed in these areas, we continue to find grace from you. Perhaps maybe we've also found grace from the one that we've been married to, who's still here. And just their presence has said, I love you, I forgive you, and I believe in you. And Father, may we receive that grace from both you and from them and use that as a motivator to become more and more like you. For those in this room who are single, who are struggling through this desert wasteland that is often the dating scene, may they find their peace in you, that they might wait on you as they pursue your vision for what marriage is intended to be. We ask all these things in your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.